She was just a brilliant law student working a part-time job to make ends meet. He was a powerful billionaire, hiding secrets behind his charming smile. In the opulent halls of a sprawling mansion, an unexpected connection blossoms. Conversations by the fire, stolen glances, and promises of a life beyond her imagination. But as her world begins to shift, she stumbles upon something she was never meant to see. Emily Harper never imagined that her part-time job as a housekeeper at the Caldwell Mansion would lead to a romance with Nathaniel Caldwell himself. Nate, as he insisted she call him, was everything she had never looked for in a man. Arrogant, controlling, and so absurdly wealthy that he seemed to view the world as a chessboard where people were merely pieces to move at his will. Yet there was something about him that drew her in, something magnetic in the way he made her feel special, intelligent, and unlike anyone he was used to dealing with. Between nights of conversations by the fireplace and elaborate dinners he prepared just for the two of them, Emily began to believe that perhaps he was more than the image he projected to the world. He listened to her, asked questions about her family and her ambition to become a lawyer. In many moments, she even admired him. But everything fell apart on a sunny afternoon while Emily was cleaning Nate's office. He had left for a meeting, and she was alone in the mansion. Organizing a pile of papers on his desk, she came across a folder that seemed out of place. Curious, she opened it. What she found froze the blood in her veins. There were falsified contracts, suspicious bank transfers tied to offshore accounts, and notes detailing bribes to politicians and influential businessmen. Nate's philanthropy was a facade. He was at the center of a massive corruption scheme, manipulating public contracts and embezzling millions of dollars. Emily closed the folder with trembling hands, bile rising in her throat. It wasn't just a disappointment. It was a betrayal. She tried to convince herself that she could confront him, but she knew it wouldn't be that simple. Nate wasn't the kind of man who allowed himself to be challenged, and the power he wielded was overwhelming. When he returned that night, Emily couldn't hide her tension. "Is everything okay?" he asked, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Yes, just tired." The lie came out hesitantly, but he seemed to believe it. In the days that followed, Emily distanced herself from him. Nate noticed. Always observant, he began asking questions, trying to understand what had changed. Finally, during a dinner he had prepared, the situation reached its breaking point. "What's going on, Emily?" he asked, cutting through the silence with his firm voice. "You've been avoiding looking me in the eye." Emily set her fork down. It was now or never. "Nate, I saw the documents in your office." His face remained expressionless for a moment, but then he sighed and leaned back in his chair, as if the weight of a long-held secret had finally fallen. "Emily, you don't understand how the world works. No one gets to the top by being a saint. Is that an excuse? You bribed politicians, stole money, pretended to be a decent person, and I believed you." The words poured out in a torrent. "You don't understand," he repeated, his gaze hardening. "Everything you saw, everything I did, is the price of survival at the top, where I belong." Emily stood, refusing to hear more justifications. "I'm leaving. I can't be part of this." But before she could walk away, he stopped her with a proposal that made her freeze in place. "Wait. It doesn't have to be like this. We can reach an understanding." He pulled a check from the inside pocket of his jacket and scribbled $10 million. "Here. This could change your life, Emily. Enough for you to never have to work again. All you have to do is keep quiet." Emily looked at the check, the number glowing like a beacon in her eyes. It was enough money to solve all her problems. But at what cost? She raised her eyes to him, and the face of Nate, which once felt so familiar, now belonged to a stranger. "Do you think you can buy my morals?" she whispered, her voice steady. He shrugged, the enigmatic smile returning to his lips. "I think everyone has a price, Emily. The only question is, how much?" Emily held the check tightly, her hands trembling as conflicting thoughts swirled in her mind. This would change her life forever. All the sacrifices she'd made to work while studying, the chance to help her family, it was all in her hands. Nate watched her silently, waiting for her response. Emily looked at the check in her hands, the weight of the decision pressing on her shoulders. For a long moment, she stood motionless as Nate stared at her with that half smile. confident that she would make the choice he wanted. In the end, she raised her eyes and slipped the check into her pocket. "I accept." The answer came out as a whisper, barely audible, but it was enough for Nate. He gave a small nod and poured another glass of whiskey, as if the matter was settled. That night, Emily could hardly sleep. The check, now tucked away in a drawer, seemed to burn like an unspoken secret. But by morning, when she looked at it again, something within her hardened. That absurd amount of money could pay not only for her Harvard tuition, but also for a house for her mother. It would simply solve everything. In the following months, Emily adapted to her new reality. Nate fulfilled his part of the deal, transferring the money into her account and ensuring that no one knew the secret she carried. He also seemed closer than ever, as if the tension between them had disappeared. Emily wasn't entirely sure if it was a strategy or if Nate genuinely cared for her. Perhaps it was both. Nate took her to exclusive dinners at Boston's most sought-after restaurants. He gifted her haute couture dresses and discreet but incredibly expensive jewelry. Emily began keeping up with his lifestyle, learning to move among the elite circles as if she had always belonged there. "You fit in well in this world," Nate said once, as she politely smiled at an investor who asked obvious questions about Harvard. "Maybe even better than I do." Emily shrugged, hiding a smile. "That's because I know I'll never truly belong here." Despite the apparent normality, there were moments when the weight of what she had accepted consumed her. Sometimes, in the silence of the night, she found herself mentally revisiting the documents she had seen, wondering how many people had been harmed by Nate's actions. But when she looked at her overflowing bank account and thought about the future that now seemed secure, she pushed those thoughts away as if they were inconvenient flies. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," he said one night as they shared a bottle of wine on the mansion's terrace. Emily laughed, a laugh tinged with sadness. "Because I'm not like the people you know, Nate. I'm not from here." "Maybe that's exactly why I like you so much." They started sleeping together almost every night. Nate enveloped her with an intimacy that made her forget, even if just for a little while, everything she knew about him. There were nights when she believed he could change, that he could become the man he pretended to be in front of the cameras. But then, at other times, he was cold and distant, reminding her that power always came first. "I've always been told you can't have everything in life," he remarked once, staring at the city view. "But I think I came close." Emily wondered if he was talking about her or the corrupt empire he had built. Months passed, and Emily's life felt like a dream. She continued attending Harvard, but with expensive handbags, designer clothes, and a luxury apartment that Nate had arranged for her. Nate remained in her life, more charming than ever. He was confident that Emily was on his side. He took her to events where politicians and businessmen greeted him with calculated smiles. Emily smiled back, shook hands, and laughed at their jokes. "You know you're the only person in this world I truly trust, don't you?" Nate said one night as he stared out at Boston from his mansion's terrace. Emily simply nodded, hiding the lump forming in her throat. "I trust you more than anyone, Emily." Everything seemed perfect for the couple, until one ordinary morning, everything fell apart. Emily was sitting in the mansion's living room, reviewing a law book, when she heard raised voices in the hallway. Within seconds, federal agents stormed into the space, their black uniforms emblazoned with the FBI emblem. Nate, who was descending the stairs, froze abruptly. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice full of indignation. "Nathaniel Caldwell, you're under arrest on suspicion of corruption, bribery, and money laundering," announced the lead agent, Sarah Bennett. Nate laughed, incredulous. "Is this some kind of joke?" He looked at Emily, who was watching silently. But something in her face made him stop. Her expression wasn't one of surprise or fear. It was calm, controlled. It was then that he understood. "It was you?" he murmured, disbelief in his voice. Emily didn't respond. She simply stood slowly, keeping her eyes fixed on him. The fury that crossed his face was almost immediate. Nate was taken away, shouting insults as the mansion was searched. Emily stood still, watching everything unfold without showing any emotion. The next day, the story was on every news channel. Real estate magnate Nathaniel Caldwell arrested for billion-dollar corruption scheme. Sources suggest close associates' betrayal. The world wanted to know who had betrayed Nate, and it didn't take long for Emily Harper's name to surface. The story unraveled gradually. Emily had accepted Nate's money, but used the time she gained to gather evidence and hand it over to the FBI. The detailed evidence, combined with Emily's testimony, built an irrefutable case against him. Harvard quickly recognized her bravery, granting her a full scholarship and public accolades. Prestigious law firms sent her offers, eager to associate their names with the young woman who brought down one of Boston's most powerful men. When everything finally calmed down, Emily visited her mother, who was immensely proud. "You did what you had to do, sweetheart. You're an example to everyone in this world," her mother said, holding her hand. Emily just smiled but didn't reply. She knew she had done the right thing, but there was a part of her that would never forget the days she spent by Nate's side. He was a terrible man, but for a moment, she believed there was more to him. Perhaps her greatest lesson was this: never trust anyone blindly, and always work with integrity. No amount of money in the world can buy the peace of a clear conscience.
If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel. We need your support.
Better stories are yet to come.